This is episode 69 of the Wilderness Locals podcast. On this episode, our guest is Nick Trehearne. Nick's a professional hunting photographer and all-around great dude. This podcast is brought to you by Kifaru International, the toughest hunting gear on the planet, bar none. Frontiersman gear, high quality, completely custom, handmade knives made in the heart of the Peace Country. And as always, we're brought to you by Just Shooting Arrows, BC's premier archery shop. Last week and a bit here has been a pretty wild ride.
No doubt.
How have you been, man? You're steady traveling, steady doing Nick things.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good summary.
Yeah.
That's been absolutely mental.
Yeah, it looks like you're working on some cool projects this year, though.
Yeah, definitely. Been in 4 states and 3 provinces in the last 2 months, so it's been super fun. With all the travel restrictions and stuff like that right now, is it pretty hard to get around, or? The COVID tests are a giant pain in the ass. But other than that, it's actually surprisingly easy and seamless, and kind of everyone I encounter is super open to it. So it's been nice.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome, then, man. That's like, yeah, it is surprising, like having, been in the hospital stuff with my family in the last month here. It's pretty, it seems like everybody kind of has a handle on the steps to get in and out of places now these days. It's starting to kind of be pretty easy, like you said.
Yeah, it's just part of life now, unfortunately.
I'd like to see this stuff go away at some point, but I don't know if it's going to.
Yeah, you and me both.
Right. So Any trip that stands out like massively to you so far that you're allowed to talk about?
Aoudad was definitely the most fun thing this fall.
Yeah.
They were an eye opener. Like, I've been around like high fence, more tame ones before where you can sneak up to them easy, but these things were probably the most wild animal I've ever hunted, where we were like, you get a kilometer out and they even catch a glimpse of you when they run 5 miles. Like, it was nuts.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then all the shots, like the closest these guys were able to get was like 450 yards. And I think the longest shot was like 800. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, a challenge on a whole new level.
That's super cool. Me and Wasey have been talking about going in the spring. I don't know if we're going to make it happen this spring, but maybe next spring with Scotty Campbell from Topo, Texas and Snyder there.
Nice. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, it should be cool, man. It's like the Stickboat Chronicles guys went and they were like, yeah, it's no joke. It's like an actual mountain hunt.
Yeah.
Which you don't think about, like, for Texas, right?
Yeah, no, it was pretty rugged. Like, you get pretty south to or close to the Mexico border, and yeah, it's every bit as steep as like a Cali hunt around Kamloops.
Oh wow, that's cool. Yeah. I feel like you're a little bit you're like a little bit numb to some of the challenges of some of these hunts, though. Like, whenever I talk to you, you're like, you know.
Yeah, I just take them at face value. Like, I don't let the mental thing play into it as much as a lot of dudes.
I feel like from your perspective, like with it being your job, like, I think you almost can't tap, right?
Oh yeah, like that would be the end of my career if I got back to a client and be like, "Yeah, sorry, it was just too hard." Like, cool, I'll never hire you again. Right on.
Yeah, it's too steep here. I can't.
Yeah, that's not really an option. Like, shy of something like late season goats and avalanches, like, I just straight up won't go to that level of risk if like it's something that's going to kill me. But everything shy of it, I don't really care.
Yeah, I actually on your latest Q&A, which prompted our conversations, which reminded me, hey, you need to come back on the podcast. I was like, top 3 winter goat tips, because you've done quite a few of them, eh?
Yeah. Usually 1 or 2 a year for the last 8 or 9 years.
It's like, it's one of those things that I said I would never do.
Yeah.
But I drew this goat tag, and then we went on this goat hunt in August. And it was super fun and super killer. And my Wasey got Giardia and got real sick pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you listened to that one, but it was pretty gnarly experience. But I with that limited entry tag, I don't want to burn the tag, and now that I've been in there and seen all those goats, I want to go back so bad. So
totally.
I think we're talking about going in kind of the middle of February now.
Oh, that'll be cool.
Yeah. So, okay, here's my question then. For winter goat hunting, when's kind of like, once you get through that like wet and gross season of like nasty, like late October, like whiteout snow, gonna die, slippery stuff. When do you think the best time to head in is?
I don't know. There's perks to everything. Like November's the rut, obviously. So they're down low chasing nannies around. So that's awesome. February, just with the popularity that a few guys kind of consistently talking about it has brought, the end of February is a crapshoot in a lot of zones, just with pressure. Like, I'm starting to see tons and tons of guys where I went 3, 4, 5 years without ever seeing a guy. Now I'm seeing 4, 5, 6 kind of hunting groups in a trip. So like personally now I go kind of the last 2 weeks of January, first 2 weeks of February, just to stay away from the crowds and kind of gamble on the weather for being good enough.
You think the weather gets better the further you get away from sort of like now?
No, definitely not. It's going to be dumping snow all through the winter.
Cool.
Like even last year, I think first week of February, there was 2 or 3 days in a row where we got a foot of snow a day on the hunt. So yeah,
that's
you
rough.
just really never know.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm sure I'll be bugging you about gearless and stuff between now and then. So
yeah, totally.
Unfortunately, I have your phone number.
This time to change it, don't worry.
Yeah, right. I could block it. Yeah. Oh man. So you're gearing up too. Wednesday you take off again.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy deer season for me now. Doing trips for 4 of the different species in the next month and a half.
Nice.
Yeah, everything but Coos deer. So Sitkas, Columbias, mule, and whitetail.
Nice. Like a Columbia blacktail shoot?
Yeah.
Really, eh?
Yeah, so that'll be a super fun one.
Oh, no way.
Sitkas are one of my favorite things, period, to hunt. So that'll be awesome. And
me too. And everybody thinks I'm nuts.
Oh man, they're so fun. There's not much better.
They're kind of like tiny silent elk. I always tell people, like, they have just the ability to disappear.
Oh, totally. Or appear out of like a stump.
Right. I was saying one of my hunting partners, Chad, he's like, he's a young guy. He's like, I think he's 6 or 7 years younger than me, but he's like, I've said this before on here. He's one of those dudes that, like when he talks, you're like, you feel like you're talking to somebody that's from like, 100 years ago, right? He's just like not from now. He's that type of dude. Like he always has a dip in and he says really profound stuff and he doesn't talk that often. But we're like, oh yeah, he's awesome. But we're sitting there and we're in like one of my main blacktail spots and he's looking at it. He hunts with a longbow right now, right? And he's like looking at this longbow and he's like, blacktail just have a way of when you take your eyes off wherever you were looking, you look back, they're there. Then you get an arrow on the string and they're gone. Like it's so true, man.
Oh, entirely.
Yeah.
There's something about them that just hooks you, though.
Yeah, there is. Have you spent a lot of time hunting them?
Oh, tons. I've done, I don't know, half a dozen work trips, and I've probably shot 40 of them myself.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, lots and lots of time.
I think years ago I read an article you wrote about Haida Gwaii, right?
Yeah, in BC Outdoors.
Oh, yeah.
From one of my first trips, and then I've done 1 or 2 a year since.
That's cool. Is that a trip you'd really recommend to dudes?
Yeah, totally. Just because you can make it whatever you want, right? Like if you want a wall tent based camp where you're hanging out with the boys and maybe fishing and just go drive around and shoot a deer out of a cut block, you can do it. But at the same time, like if you want the most gnarly, steep bushwhacking mountain hunt you'll ever do, you can pull that off like 10 kilometers away. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it just really appeals to everybody.
That's super cool. I was.
Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
We've even done like a canoe based trip and just like paddled up and down the inlets and shot deer that way. And yeah, it's just so diverse.
That's super cool. I'd love to get up there at some point. I've never been to Haida Gwaii.
Yeah.
I was going to say yesterday, I mean, you're talking about how you can make it whatever you want with blacktail. Like yesterday I had my eldest daughter and I were out stomping around and, we spent more time looking at goats than we did looking at deer sign. You know, it's like the habitat they live in can be so insane.
Oh, totally.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you've done most of your blacktail hunting on the coast then?
Yeah. For Sitka's all Haida Gwaii.
Oh, nice. And then what about Colombia?
I've done it like down on the island and stuff, but this will be down in the States.
So cool.
It'll be somewhere new and exciting.
Yeah, some of the blacktail that come out of like California and Southern Oregon are just like next level, hey?
Yeah, it's super. Like it's one of those fine line things, though, because like Boone and Crockett doesn't recognize a lot of them just because it's so close to the mule deer genetics. They just won't take them. So it's like, yeah, you got to kind of question if like the guy sitting behind a 170 big deer is actually a blacktail, because like that's a freak of nature if it is. Yeah, for sure. I think they were talking about maybe implementing a hybrid zone. Mm-hmm. I think it would probably be a good idea. Like there's like that kind of dead zone in BC where nothing kind of counts to either. You know, the genetics there are too small to be making book for mule deer, and they're way too big for blacktail. But yeah, those deer kind of get left in the lurch a bit. Yeah, totally. It's pretty wild. Is mule deer. Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're so cool, and it's so fun to hunt them because you don't really hunt them the same way you hunt mule deer either, which is kind of neat. Yeah, definitely different tactics. Like I've never really sat and glassed for Columbias ever. It's more like still hunting and stuff like that. Or like even ambush hunting, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've been like, that's one of the things I've sort of been chasing with them is like, in kind of region 2 where I live, like there's so much alpine, and I'm like, these things have to be using this like this up high country, and it's just like I'm not convinced they do at this point, you know, other than like in the dead of summer, they seem to disappear. Yeah, it's hard not to want that though, like just that picturesque like dream of big blacktail up in the alpine. That's just it, man. I was saying to Ronnie the other day, I was like, man, there's just so many areas that are so beautiful and they're so nice, and like I'd love to spend time up there, but just the animals aren't there. Oh, I know. It's weird. Like BC is unique for that. I find like when I born and raised in Alberta, and I'd never experienced that. Like if you hiked into somewhere really badass that looks like it should hold animals, and the Rockies there was animals there. It's like here you could do it and there's not a deer or elk in 5 miles from you. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's crazy too. And like when you talk to I mean, you probably experience this all the time talking to clients, right? When people ask about BC, or, you know, I've said this before on here, you hear guys talking about Colorado or whatever. It's just, BC is so big, like you start walking in a random direction, you're not going to pop out on a highway like you do in the US, right? Yeah. There's just so much country for these animals to go. Like even down here in region 2, it's like you start heading east and you're like, you might not ever come out at a road, you know? Yeah, totally. That's pretty wild. That kind of has its own massive benefit too, because for the guys willing to haul ass away from the roads, like you're gonna get into some good hunting sooner or later. Absolutely, and like down there, it's just like pressure everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, we just have the ability to get away from folks, right?
Exactly.
I very rarely run into people when I'm hunting. Like even in my like super high pressure elk spot that we were talking about before I hit record on here, it's like I just pack in a little further and through some nastier country, and I'm away from the dudes.
Yeah, exactly. It usually doesn't take too much.
I don't think that happens in the U.S.
No, not that I've ever seen. Not unless you're paying like hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep private land to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was going to say, you've probably had some shoots messed up by, Larry Honda and the boys rolling in when you guys are trying to film a hunt.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of endless. Like, that's just something I find when you're hunting public land in the States, you just have to factor in. It's like, you're not just glassing for like other deer animals or whatever on your stock. It's like, is there any dudes coming up from the bottom, or like you hear a guy bugling over the next ridge? Like, how's he going to screw this up? And you just have to play it all, right?
Yeah. You heard I'm laughing to myself here on Kafaru Cast. I think this was in the middle of September. They were talking about it. They were on these deer, and next thing you know, there's people doing yoga in the basin that they were in.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I can't, dude. I can't imagine. Can you? Like,
yeah, totally. Actually, I got my first ram that way, is like a bunch of like tree hugging hikers that helped me out essentially. So yeah.
Rad.
Yeah.
I want to hear that story.
So me and my buddy were up on this ridge in Alberta, like late season. It closes the end of October, and it was like damn near that. So it was snowing and shitty and all that. And he had a U tag and I had a ram tag. And like all day long, we did not see a sheep. Like, it just sucked. It was miserable. It was cold. It was windy. Mm-hmm. And then like we hear these bear bells and like people talking, like coming out of the middle of nowhere, right? Because like we had hiked in quite a ways. And like, sure enough, this like random group of like brightly colored hippies shows up. It's like, oh, cool. Like, they talk to us, like kind of put their nose up at us because we're in camo and have guns and whatever. And then they're like, yeah, well, cool, whatever. Be cool if you guys get one, but you're probably not. So whatever, we'll keep hiking. And then they hike a couple ridges over and boom, bust out a legal ram. It's like, well, nice. Awesome. That totally benefited. And yeah, we ended up getting first to 30 yards of this thing. And then a bunch of crap went down and it ended up blowing out. My buddy couldn't arrow it, and I plugged it with the rifle as it ran away.
That's wicked.
For those random hikers, like that thing, we never would have seen it. Like, it was in a hole.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you, hippies.
Yeah, exactly.
And I will call this ram the hippie ram.
Yeah. Again, totally benefit at the right time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, down a region too here, sometimes those guys on dirt bikes or side by sides or mountain bikes or the hippies with the bear bells, they just stand deer up midday when they would never get up normally, and they'll adjust their location, and if you're in a good spot, they sometimes come right to you, right?
Yeah,
it's pretty fun. Man, oh, I'm cracking up. That's a good one. I don't think I've had like any like hippie encounters like that. I mean, I've had people like run into me at the truck that are like definitely not cool with hunters and that kind of thing. But I don't know. I wear a lot of solids, and I'm usually pretty polite to people. And
oh, totally, you have to be.
I tend to ditch the gun pretty quick, the gun or the bow in the truck pretty quick, anyways, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I think a lot of folks forget, like, when we run into people like that, we're kind of like, you're the entire face of hunting in that moment.
Oh, yeah. And it's so easy to, like, one smart ass remark and you've made an anti for life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's just it, man. It's like, I know a lot of people get real bent out of shape about like Ranella and those guys right now. But they are a really good conduit for like the the like 1 foot in, 1 foot out crowd, like the guys that are not like you're like a thoroughbred hunter and I'm like an adult hunter. I don't want to say adult onset. I'd throw up, but I started hunting in my 20s, right?
Yeah.
But like for those guys that are maybe get curious about hunting, or those gals that are curious about hunting, like it's so palatable, right? It's not so extreme,
Yeah. And like you said, a lot of guys hate on him and what group bought him out and like all the politics behind it. But like he's done more for bridging the gap on those type of people than pretty much anyone on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't really hate on him. And you got to follow the example more than anything.
Yeah, here's a real interesting rabbit hole, and I know you'll have some good insight on it, right? So, like, I think anybody that's been involved in any kind of product development, distribution, or manufacturing, right? And that's kind of, I try not to talk about myself too much on here, but that's sort of what my background was. Like, in anybody that's involved in any product development, manufacturing or distribution, like it becomes plain to see that the lines quickly get blurred between companies when we're talking about supply chain and suppliers for raw materials and stuff like that. And like you look at like a lot of these outdoors companies, and I'm not talking about Meat Eater and First Light and all those guys specifically now, just in general. A lot of those companies are using the same suppliers or are owned by the same parent company anyways.
Oh, yeah. I see it all the time. Like, especially because I'm billing typically those parent companies when I'm working with a lot of companies. Guys have no clue. Like, it's cool to take like the most prolific stance against, like First Light or Meat Eater or whatever. But at the same time, these guys are wearing gear that is invested in by aunties, that is, like you said, supplied by like, it's just such an interesting topic that most people are oblivious to.
Well, I think I think a lot of guys fail to realize, like, if you take a hardline stance, like, oh, I'm unwilling to do anything that could potentially be influenced by aunties, right? You'd be going in the woods naked.
Oh, 100%. There's not a piece of gear out there that does not have that, I guess, side of the spectrum's money involved in it. Well, very, very few anyway. Yeah,
like if they exist, let me know. Like, I think maybe offhand, I think the only one I can think of is maybe Swazi.
Yeah.
Because Davy's completely independent, but I think he probably deals with some suppliers for material that probably are. Who knows, right?
But even like shipping and things like that, it's like you wouldn't have your product even if it was like, if you just take the hardest stance ever, you will have nothing.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I can't really. I honestly can't think of a company, right?
No, it's a never-ending thing, though. It's like when everyone got pissed off at Sitka as being anti. It's like, really, like that's their entire business. And then same with First Light, and guys were blowing up their Yeti coolers, and it's just kind of like the generation we're living in, where you have to just be protesting and pissed off at something. You can't just like do shit together.
Yeah, I think the Ranella thing is super interesting, like how guys frame it. About, the parent company is donates money to anti-hunting efforts, right?
That is a slippery one. Like, I get it. Like, it's Aaron Group. They are one of the larger anti-gun funding groups in the United States.
Yeah.
That bought the Meat Eater Group. So,
meanwhile, it's like,
but like, what billionaire does not invest in lucrative things, regardless of the political siding behind it? Like, that's why this is also intertwined, right? At the end of the day, guys are just going to make money.
Yeah, that's the exact thing I was just going to say. Like, a lot of investments that you make, if you're making investments, are not based on the product, service, commodity, whatever. It's based on the upside, right?
Yeah, exactly. And even like a lot of these companies are publicly traded. Like you look at Yeti. So literally every auntie under the sun could be an owner.
Well, and they are.
Company. I know they are. But like that's my whole point is like you look at any one of them, like we do live in a very traded, like publicly traded world. So once again, it's just you can't take those firm stances.
Oh man, I mean that's when I was selling the last business I had that I sold. You should have seen the people that were trying to buy it. Like, cause it's fun being in that position because you get to do all these little mini interviews with people that are trying to buy something that they want, right? And you kind of have the final say, and you're like, oh wow, this guy made all his money developing refrigerator parts, and this guy did this. And it's like it's never from the same industry unless a competitor is trying to absorb you, right? Oh,
totally. Like I don't know. At the end of the day, I personally won't support a blatantly obvious like anti-company. Like, on the fishing side, if there's a company that's just straight up against it, I won't support them. But like same thing, if you look deeper, you already are. So
yeah. I totally agree with that, man. Like I said earlier, I think a lot of dudes would be heading to the woods buck naked if they had such a hardline stance, you know?
Yeah, that's a fact. Like even like if you want to use Sitka's owned by Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex is in bed with obviously a ton of anti-hunting companies just by nature of what they are. Like every single outdoor company uses them. So by default, they all have ties to anti.
Oh, it's like, I mean, what's the other one?
Everyone suddenly outlaw mountain hunting clothes. Like,
I mean, like, look at what Soul is on every boot ever, Vibram, right? They're supplying and making money off of a ton of anti-hunting companies, right? Or you cannot buy a boot without a Vibram sole. Okay, that's 98%. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, it's interesting.
We're sitting on like name one person that doesn't have Facebook because they like to bitch about anti-hunting on Facebook, yet they're blocking it and restricting it, yet we all use it. It's like so hypocritical to stand on one thing and not the next.
Yeah, I think there is certain things that you can maybe pick and choose and die on your sword. And one of those things is, you know, our in BC here, our privilege, if you think about it a certain way, to hunt and fish, right?
Yeah. That's a rabbit hole in itself.
Right? Isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. Do they classify it as a privilege? Sure.
I'm not sure.
No, I don't think.
I don't know. How's it written?
They can take it away. Same as guns in Canada. There's no question. But good luck trying to tell me to stop if they take it away, putting food on my table. Like, tough shit.
Yeah, totally. It's funny too when you kind of look at the history of how people were eating and living, you know, in North America, right? It's pretty ingrained in the culture here.
Yeah, entirely. Like both pre-colonization and post. Like white dudes came over and it's been part of like that heritage as well as First Nation heritage for hundreds of years. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. I have a little more optimistic outlook than a lot of people do. I mean, you talk to a lot of people about where hunting is going, you know, in the next 1 through 10 years, and you get a wide variety of opinions, and you know, everything from you're going to get more hunting to we're going to have no hunting, you know.
Yeah. Oh, entirely. That's so regional. Obviously, it's provincially controlled, but I have my own views. I think BC's on kind of the bottom end of handling it versus a lot of other jurisdictions, but at the end of the day, there will be some form of hunting.
Yeah, you mean BC's at the bottom end of how they handle it, or?
Yeah, like for actually looking optimistic and being proactive, both for the animals, for the hunters, for all parties involved kind of thing. Yeah, they're just tanking it.
Yeah. So if Nick was ruler of British Columbia, king of British Columbia, what would you do?
I would quit making rules and exceptions for humans and manage for the best wildlife and habitat possible.
Nice.
It is so far gone with political BS that it's just killing us.
Yeah, I think that's the truth.
Yeah, like even provincially, like so we're all under the same blanket rules. Like there's provinces out east that are handling things far superior to what we are even thinking or talking about, like, and they've executed it. But it's things that you come to BC and it's just like, no, it can't happen. It can't work that way. But no one ever looks outside of these, like the Pacific and the Alberta border for examples on how to handle it, on like leading by example. So yeah, we're killing ourselves that way. Like even talking to BC hunters, so many guys are like, well, I don't care. That's how it is in BC. That's how it affects me. It's like, cool. Well, if we look 2 provinces over, they've already learned this lesson and this is why you don't do it. But it's like BC's just not willing to do that. So
what are some examples of what you're talking about?
Getting rid of spike fork moose, getting rid of 4-point mule deer season, just for the betterment of the health. Like Alberta is a perfect example. They got rid of 4-point deer and the overall quality and herd stability went up.
Yeah.
Like, it does not keep more mature deer on the landscape having a 4-point rule. You have to like evenly harvest, not wipe out one specific category of the age bracket.
Yeah. So, do you think it's true that you remove genetics by focusing on a particular age class of deer, elk, or moose or whatever? Like you hear guys talk about the Kootenays, how the Kootenays doesn't make 6 points anymore. You often hear that, right?
Yeah. Not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure I buy that one. Like, it could, in theory, like genetically, some elk are only ever going to be 5 points. Some deer are only going to be 3 points. But is there enough to actually sway the population into not having any? I personally wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
But is it enough to keep the herd unhealthy? Just constantly smashing 6 points? 100%.
Yeah. That's sort of my, I agree with that too. Right. Like a lot of southern BC anyways, where it is, like a 6 point elk zone. If anybody sees a 6 point elk, they, like you say, they smash the first one they see. Right.
Yeah. And guys are like without being like blowing anyone up or anything, like people are like dialed killers now. Like what we are capable of killing in a year versus what they used to. Like in an area so populated with so much access like the Kootenays, guys are killing a very good chunk of the 6 points each year. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Whereas if it was a wide open season, like make it a shorter season, any bowl or draw or whatever, which is another thing you can't say in BC is put something on draw or you get lynched. It would even it out, right? Like guys would shoot the first 2 point they see. Like how many guys would would just smash elk? Like they wouldn't hold out for a point. But then that would leave the older age class to spread it a little more. Yeah, man. The spikes, like the leftover spikes and 2 points, aren't really repopulating the population.
No.
They will when they grow up, but not that year.
And hopefully they make it.
Exactly.
I mean,
wolves, cougars, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say, man. After hunting Alberta a little bit and looking, I mean, from work and hunting all over the place, like as soon as you start looking at the regulations in another province or even another zone, you start looking at the limited entry opportunity or the over the counter opportunity. And then you immediately, the first thing you do is compare it to home. Right.
Yeah.
And like having hunted Alberta a little bit, I'm like, well, like the first year I hunted it was a real eye opener for me. And I was like, I'm hunting this zone that is like really easy to get around in, like a southern Alberta, like, kind of grazing grassland, like hoodoo-y, like you could almost get around in a wheelchair in that baby if you had to, right? Like, it's pretty mellow. It's not BC mountain hunting. And I'm like, wait a minute. I can kill any deer? Oh, no. As a non-resident, you can only kill bucks. You can kill any buck, but a resident can kill any deer. I'm like, wait a minute. So why does this place put off 200-inch mule deer if I can kill any deer all season long? Oh, exactly. it's because the rifle hunt takes freaking 10 to 13 years to draw.
Yeah.
It's like
2 months of bow season and 1 month the rifle. Like, I'm pretty sure I was like, I hunt down near where you were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about that before.
And like that rifle tag took forever, but it was worth it. And I shot a big deer with it. But you know that, like, I would way rather have, same thing. You can't say it to a BC person or you get lynched, but put everything on draw. Mm-hmm. Some draw will be 1-to-1, some will be 10-to-1, but it'll make it better. Get rid of these stupid point restrictions. Like, moose, just have moose draw, period. And same thing. Good areas will be easier. Declining areas will be harder, but it'll help our population, even though we're not addressing the bigger issue that is habitat, obviously, that we're growing up in this province. But it doesn't mean you don't do the little things to help just because there's a bigger thing to attack, right? Like, do what you can. And realistically, we're not shutting down industry anytime soon in this province. So there are things we can do.
Yeah, for sure. Jeff, my buddy Jeff Agostino is doing a podcast on the channel now called Tent Talk, and the first one that they did was about BC mule deer. Yeah. And Jeff has his own take on what he thinks needs to happen, but he presented it in a way that definitely rubbed people the wrong way, which I mean is good. It's good. It's good. But he framed it as like, let's talk about this. Like, comment on Instagram or send me a message and we'll discuss it. Yeah. Let's do it. Like, let's chat. And kind of his sort of take is like, it's really hard to complain about age class in BC when dudes like smash the first thing with bone on its head, right? For all of October, and it's like the same guys that are like, oh, big deer don't exist. He thinks are, the same guys that are killing spikes, right? Yeah. And like you say, you start talking about limited entry, and people lose their minds. Yeah.
But like, throw back what you just said about your experience in Alberta to where guys can shoot literally any buck, both in bow season over the counter and rifle season with the draw. They can smash spikes, but you get your 200-inch deer. Mm-hmm. So it's not a direct product of shooting little deer and not having big deer. Yeah. It's when you remove specific age classes, I think. But same thing. Yeah. It's a rabbit hole, and tons of guys argue and swear at me for my opinions on this. Like, obviously, there's the anti-LEH crowd and the pro-opportunity crowd. And yeah, like, I've been called all sorts of things for having those views in public places.
Yeah, I somewhere I kind of ride the line of, actually, just to back up a little bit, on that same podcast that Jeff did, he was talking about how shocked he was when they changed it from three mule deer to 1 mule deer. Yeah. He was shocked that people were upset. Yeah. Like,
like, people hate change that restricts how much shit you can kill in a year.
Yeah, and it's like,
even if it's for the betterment of the species.
Yeah, and so that's where that's kind of where I was going with it, and that's sort of where I'm at. Like, the amount of opportunity that we have here in BC right now in our seasons, and you'll have experienced this too, having dealt with Americans a lot, is they're so liberal compared to just about anywhere else in I mean, in North America, in North America or the world, right? It's like
we have no grounds to complain, even if they put everything on draw with our hunting opportunity.
That's just it, you know. And it's like when you start striking outside of BC, and I get it. BC residents have no need to look outside of BC. We have literally everything except desert bighorn.
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't have speed goat either, but
yeah,
that's neither here nor there. You know, you start looking outside of BC and you're like, oh, wait, guys in Washington get 2 weeks to hunt blacktail bucks.
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah. I get from September 1st to December, like 15th or 20th.
Yeah, that's just it. Like, you just got to be willing to go do it. Like, blacktails on Haida Gwaii, you get from the start of June to the end of February. Like, no one can ever say we don't have opportunity to hunt in this province.
And you can kill 78,000 of them a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what?
Yeah. But you said guys don't have to leave, but, like, I crave leaving every single year for my personal hunting. But it's because I want to hunt a properly managed area where I see numerous shooters a day. And for things like deer, we cannot do that in this province.
Yeah.
I have yet to talk to anyone or see anyone that goes rifle hunting for a mule deer in this province and sees 5 or 6 bucks they're considering shooting in a day. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not a thing. Which is kind of a shame, because with what we have, it could be so much more if it was managed properly to where it was those levels.
Yeah, on that same podcast I was just talking about with Jeff, I like started a thought and I never finished it. And this is a good place to finish that thought because it's exactly what we're talking about. My mule deer hunt last year was like a pretty gnarly early November pre-rut hunt. And so I'm good buddies. I shouldn't say good buddies. I've become friends with one of the old school outfitters for the area who's there, you know, from the 50s to the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And I was telling him, dude, I hunted hard, like, you know, 15 to 20K kilometers every day, like up, down, around, in and out, like everything, right? And I shot the first legal 4-point that I saw the entire trip on the last day in the last hour of light. And like, he's an okay deer. He's like our American or Albertan friends would be like, why'd you shoot that deer? But you know, he's like a good BC 4-point. Right. And, I was telling, my buddy who was the outfitter in the area, and he was like, man, in the 60s and 70s and 80s, he goes, we would ride into that exact spot on horseback, and we would probably see 10 to 30 4-points every morning, every single morning.
That's just it. Like, there's proof that BC is capable of it.
Well, I mean, dude, he sends me the photos, and like, I'm very reluctant to share them because they're unreal, and like, you can kind of tell where he is. Yeah. And he's old enough now where like we've talked about him coming on the podcast, but he's like a continuous 2.5 hour spot burn. Yeah. But it's like they're epic stories. I got to figure out how to do it. Like, just 100%. Like have a mute button on standby for his mic, right?
Yeah. Like, I don't know. There's places like, I don't even care saying it because it's pretty much dead. Like,
location redacted.
Even you go back only as far as the year 2000 and the deer that were coming out of there versus now, like, like the Lancasters guided in there at that time, and like 200 was not a stretch for a target. Like, it was insane. And now you go there and it's just, in my view, not even worth chasing for a mule deer. Yeah, you could kill one, but kind of like you said, it's just a deer. And when you have to justify it as not bad for BC, then you're probably not talking a trophy deer.
Yeah, no, it's you're not knocking on any record books for sure. Yeah, I mean,
what you're capable of.
Yeah, the funny thing is too about BC, and this is how guys will. This is the this is the rub or the argument other guys will make, is that those trophy deer do still exist. They're just in some hole somewhere.
Yeah, but like, kind of like the old boy was telling you, do you want a deer in a hole that one hunter might get a fleeting glimpse of in a year? Or do you want to go to a basin and see 30 of them?
Exactly. You know,
right? Like, yes, they still exist. Like, yes, there's still 400-inch elk and 200-inch mule deer in the province, but do you want that a chance every year out at that, or do you want to maybe have a fleeting glimpse once in your lifetime?
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of at the point where we've accepted mediocrity from game management standpoint, and it's sad.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, that's sort of that's one of the reasons why I am so hot about blacktail. You know, is it's like I think blacktail today is very similar to blacktail 20 years ago, right?
Yeah. Oh, me too. Like, there's those species like blacktails, black bear, mountain goats. Like, those are 3 species in BC where you can kill a cranker every year if you put it in the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you'll do it every year with a blacktail, but
yeah, but they're out there is the point. Like, in decent numbers. Like, Columbia's, yeah, they're a little more pressured, but like, if you're willing to do the work, like some of the stuff we've found on Haida Gwaii now even is like, would be very high up in the BC book if you wanted to put in the work. But yeah, you're also going to kill yourself getting to half those deer.
Well, that's just it. I mean, like yesterday, like I was saying with my 5-year-old, we were glassing some ridges that hold deer, and she's only 5, right? But she's she's a better hunter than most dudes. But we're like sitting on this ridge glassing, and she goes, "Dad, how would we get over there?" I was like, "Well, honey, we'd have to cross that river." You know, like that's just it. You did touch on a bigger issue here. And I don't have any answers, but you, I'm sure, will have some insight for us, and that's habitat.
Yeah, there's no answer until the government grows a pair and stands up to industry. Like, there really isn't. Like, around home, like I'm in Prince George, you pull up a Google Earth view of here, and there's not even barely a 2-kilometer stretch without a cut block.
Yeah,
and they're planted, like sprayed first, Rex the moose feed, then planted with a monoculture forest. It's like, it's no surprise everything's tanking.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, we're not going to win that one. Like, yeah, we'll have little pockets the province decides to protect, or like the Northern Rockies Park will be protected, whatever. But as a whole, industry will win because money's more important than wildlife to, as a whole, everybody. Like, would you be able to walk into a mill and be like, would you all be cool with shutting down because the moose will do better? It's like, no, every single person working there is going to be like, no, I want my job, right? Like, it will always prevail.
Yeah. There's a lot of money to be made, and it's a driving force in the province, right?
Yeah, entirely. Like, there's a way to do both. Like, a lot of guys are talking same thing. I'll use moose just because it's in my backyard, but like, quit spraying, deac and replant more roads to limit access. Like, like, work with industry and do the best you can. At the same time, they'd have to take a bit of a hit. We'd take a bit of a hit. Like, but there's ways to do it.
Yeah.
Trying to get the government on board with anything. Like, you talk to the bios and they're just like, our hands are tied. Like, we could yell till we're blue in the face about what needs to be done, but the people down south making the rules don't give a shit.
Yeah. I mean, that's, we see the Southern disconnect, we could call it. Like, we see it on every front, you know, we see it all the time. Like, you know, with the wolf thing and the most polarizing one, I think, is the grizzly bear hunt, right?
Yeah. Oh, entirely.
And
out hunting in the spring, I don't see a grizzly. Like, hell, I had one walking down my street in town this year.
That's wild.
And trying to get people in Vancouver, which are like the mass voting population, to ever understand why we need a hunt. It's like,
they're busy worried about coyotes in Stanley Park, though.
Yeah, totally. Which we're not allowed to kill either.
Oh, dude, that's the funniest one yet. I love that one. Like
It's
from
ridiculous.
a pure, like if you look at it as a parody, it's hilarious.
And like, I used to live in Canmore in Alberta, just outside of Banff, and it's tourist central.
Yeah.
And they actually closed down this like very popular hiking and trail in the valley one year for an aggressive ruffed grouse that was attacking people.
What?
Are you shitting me? Like, just football thing and call it good. Like,
punt.
But they had this whole area, like mountainous, gorgeous, paid hiking trail area, like flawless, shut down for a grouse for like 3 weeks. I'm like, that just sums up like people that are disconnected from reality.
Yeah. That's crazy. The rough grouse, like.
Yeah, it's just like running up and like pecking kids and shit.
That's too funny. That's insane. I love it. I love it. It's just like the coyote one was the best because they're like, the coyotes were here first, and everybody's like, actually, there wasn't coyotes before folks were here, guys. They're like, what?
Exactly.
What?
Oh.
Oh, yeah, but now they are. You're like, okay, wait, what? You got to pick a stance. Come on.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you followed the Haida stuff where they were like going to helicopter gun a bunch of them to try to wipe them out on a couple islands, but same thing. Like all these tree huggers were protesting it, and it's like you realize they're invasive. Like they were given as a gift to the province 100 and whatever years ago, like, and they're currently destroying the entire landscape. It's just like, oh. But like people just don't do research or know, or so that's why another reason why things will never change. But that's another slippery slope.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know, man. People are weird, and I think even outside of hunting, a lot of people will subscribe to whatever narrative fits their opinion or view. You know, it's like
100%.
It's pretty
selfish and will side with themselves and their own personal gain every time.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, you know. Like, yeah, like I think if you kind of like if you lived your life like that and like never looked at anything objectively,
yeah,
you'd be in a bad situation, you know.
Yeah, so many guys are though. Like,
yeah, I mean, we see it inside the hunting space a ton too, you know, like.
Oh, very much so.
I think you know. Actually, he's probably in your neck of the woods. Oh no, he's in the Kootenays. Mark Hall from the Hunter Conservationist.
Yeah, I
think he ruffles a lot of dudes' feathers when he kind of people crack off about the grizzly bear hunt, and he's like, well. It was designed to not affect the population. Like he reminds people of that fact all the time, right? And they're like, no, the grizzly bears hunt gone. Now the population is skyrocketing. And he's like, well, yeah, that's not exactly how this works. Like
no, people are portraying every bit like the hunters as well. They're portraying things for their own personal gain, not reality.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I'm glad Mark points it out to guys, you know, like,
I don't know. I get a kick out of it. Like a lot of guys, like the year after grizzlies closed, it's like the population's exploded. Everyone's going to get mauled. It's like, it's literally been a year. Mm-hmm. They didn't double. They don't reproduce that fast, but it's just like, that was the narrative that people jumped on right out of the gate. It's like, yes, can the population go up? Sure. Will it go up? Sure. Like that's proven in Alberta, who's been closed down longer than we have. Mm-hmm. But like, even hunters themselves were just so quick that very first year out of the gate being like, I'm seeing 10 times more bears than last year. It's like, no, you're not. Like, no, you got lucky and saw a few more, but it's not because of closure. Not immediately.
Yeah. I think too, if you frame your argument in a way that you're using, like, you know, you're using a narrative that is not based off fact or based off science.
Yeah.
And then you have that argument with somebody that's well read and understands the science behind somebody, which there is a lot of anti-hunters that are. Like, we can't fool ourselves, right? Like, they're not all covered in patchouli, cruising around in Patagonia, eating muffins or whatever. there are a lot that spend a great deal of time researching this stuff, right? And when the grizzly bear hunt's been shut down, the population's going to explode. All they have to do is just hit you with the LEH system in place was designed to not change the population of grizzly bears. So removing that hunt will not affect the population. Sorry. And then it's like game, set, and match. You can't argue anymore. You could argue that maybe over a decade there will be an impact.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But like the conversation's over at that point. They've won, right? It's like you need to talk about why the hunt's important. For the communities that needed it and stuff like that, right?
You got to prove our value. Sadly, that we have to do that in today's society, but you have to prove the value and validity behind it more than saying why it's wrong what they did.
Absolutely.
But that is the stance many take. Like even something like, if you want to talk, like scientific papers, sadly have a large impact. Like those are thrown around in the media, whatever. And yes, there is false ones as well as true ones. But like, how many hunters do you know that have sat down and read a 40-page or 50-page paper on the matter? Like, I've ran across like 2 in my life where it's like, especially in the grizzly thing, because there was a few really good ones floating around why we needed it. But you were like at the meetings and this and that, public consultations, and you're talking to dudes like, have you read this? Like, are you using this when you're discussing it to like grow education? It's like, nope. It's like, never even heard of it. Like,
and that's sort of the thing, right? It's hard to be an advocate for something that needs to be driven off science. And you're kind of using, whatever. And the thing that's really, really interesting to me is we're like, you can't manage wildlife based off emotion and feelings and all public point of view and all this kind of stuff.
But yet
our counter argument is based off the same stuff a lot.
Oh, entirely. Like we try to use the same anecdotal emotion. Like, don't get me wrong. Like I am 100% pro all sustainable hunting. Like,
yes,
so I'm not trying to side with that. I'm just trying to like say, like, here's how we probably should approach it to gain and grow and not lose ground, as we very clearly are. Like the antis have stopped all sorts of stuff. Like hell, they're even buying up outfits left, right, and center just to gain more and more foothold. It's like, well, what do you think's going to happen when they own all the outfits in a 500 square kilometer, 1,000 square kilometer radius? It's like, well, they have more input on what happens on that landscape. So we just have to be our guns better loaded and pointed in the right direction.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm trying to say too, right? Is like, it's not that we shouldn't have an argument. It's that the argument needs to be well informed and based off like hard, irrefutable facts.
Yeah.
It can't be based off of, well, my grandfather said we need to hunt them. Like that's not reason.
Oh, or even like, I saw 10 on this sheep trip, 10 grizz. It's like, really, that's not an argument. Like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, like that's when we got
like I went hiking and saw none. They can counter with that, and it has just as much validity to it.
Oh, exactly. I mean, that's like this goat hunt I just got back from in August. I mean, we saw. We had, what was it? It was in the first valley. We were the first drainage we were in. We saw 13 wolves.
Yeah. Oh, there's no question. There's a retarded amount of predators.
Yeah, but like that fact, like you just said, like me saying we saw 13 wolves in one drainage, like that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything unless you compare it to how many wolves are supposed to be in that drainage. And frankly, I don't know.
That's just it. Like, even if wolves were at a perfectly healthy level, which I would say most studies and people agree they're not, they're overpopulated. But even if they were at a healthy level, that's not a ridiculous statement to say. Like, I saw 13. It's like, cool, you saw a pack. Like, we need wolves on the landscape, right?
Yep.
So, like, seeing 13 does not equate, we have too many, we need to up our harvesting.
Yeah.
But those aren't the same statements, which kind of as a group and on social media and the news, whatever, it kind of seems like people take that stance as that is a good argument.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like the shoot a pack a day and like whatever. If they're overpopulated, I agree. Or the kill them all thing. It's like, no, we still need wolves on the landscape. You still need cougars. You still need grizzlies. You still need black bears. Like, they still play a role whether we like them or not. Not like it sucks when they're overpopulated and they obviously have irrefutable damage right now. But even those stands many hunters take just put a nail in our coffin.
Yeah, and I really just think like a lot of our stances on this stuff need to be framed correctly, right? And like you need to like if you're gonna say I saw 13 wolves in this valley and there's a wolf problem, you need to also be able to hit them with like, hey, in the last aerial survey in 2007 or 2017, there was only this many wolves in the valley, and the goat population has declined steady since then. Maybe there's a correlation here. Perhaps there's too many wolves in this valley. Let's look at this scientifically. Like that's how you approach it. You don't approach it with like, let's kill them all, because you're not going to make any friends outside of hunting. I mean,
that goes full circle back to earlier in our conversation with, like, I guess my stance on BC doing things shittily. Like, there is no studies, right? Like,
well, that's just it.
So many areas of BC, unfortunately, that has nothing. There's no proof. Like, I don't know if it's still changed or if they've done one, but like when I first moved here, there had never been a deer study done, period. Yeah. In this area. Yet we have over-the-counter hunting. It's like, that should not be a thing if you don't actually know what's on the landscape.
Yeah.
So same with wolves. Like, so I guess the greater thing, do we push to get more studies, more knowledge in the province to further manage our populations, or what?
Yeah. Yeah. That's just it, man. It's like you want to be able to have an informed discussion, and obviously for all of us, the end game or end goal or the what we want to see happen is we want really good hunting. We want hunting to exist. We want to be able to hunt all the things, and I want those populations to be plentiful and healthy. But I also don't. Sorry, I was just going to say, I don't really want to extirpate stuff off the landscape either, you know?
Yeah, entirely. And like to not be, I don't know, seen the wrong way earlier. Like when I say I like seeing mature deer on the landscape and trophy deer, it's like, I'm not coming from a trophy hunting standpoint. That's just a result of a healthy population.
Yeah, totally.
And that's ultimately the goal, or what I think the goal should be.
Yeah, when I had Ben O'Brien on the podcast, I really wanted his opinion on, because he's another dude that bridges the gap, like the same way the rest of the meat eater folks do. Like he's very able to provide a conduit to the non-hunting into our space, you know. Like I'm not that dude, you know. Like I'm not really the guy that is going to be able to have those conversations in a way that's super helpful. I'm like, yeah, I like to kill big deer and big elk, and let's go on a goat hunt. You know, that's me, right?
I definitely wasn't, but like, oddly enough, working in the hunting industry, I've needed to figure it out in a damn hurry.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because like, even on these things, like you invite someone on, we're sitting here BSing about hunting, wildlife, whatever, like it or not, we're the voice of hunting right now, and any anti could be listening to this. So if we want to get on here and say a bunch of dumb shit about how we need to kill everything, no. We want to say how all we care about is trophies, no. Like, so you can't be in a public eye in any way, shape, or form and not be objective. Otherwise, it's just detrimental. Absolutely. And I think it's really important we convey that. What I was just going to say about the trophy hunting thing, though, is I think that word's just been so weaponized, you know? It's like, it's like there's absolutely nothing wrong with selecting a mature animal and not shooting a younger animal because you want to select a mature animal, you know? Yeah. Like, there's a really weird, to me, it's weird anyways, I should say. There's a weird subculture in BC where guys, there's a lot of guys that, you know,
what's the word? They self-identify as meat hunters, and they look down on guys that are selecting older age class animals. I've heard quite a few stories in recent times about guys getting flack for holding out for deer from their other buddies there.
Yeah, I would say that's more predominant than trophy hunting in BC. Like the guys that rip on trophy hunting for being meat hunters.
Yeah,
like that whole opportunity.
That's a weird
crowd. But I get ripped on all the time for that, so I totally agree.
That's a weird one, man. It's like you're like you've decided to procure meat through a very difficult but also fun way, and then you're going to look down on people that are shooting less stuff because they want to select an older age class animal. That's an interesting one.
Oh, totally. Like even like, I don't know, I'll play devil's advocate and get yelled at on here again.
Yes.
The meat hunting thing, older animals have more meat. You shoot a spike moose, there's a hell of a lot less meat than a 50-inch moose. Like, so even if you wanted to play, I only care about meat, you would select a bigger, older animal.
There you go.
Do I care if you guys shoot young animals? No. Like I said, you need to harvest across the whole age spectrum. But that whole argument of meat, if that is your priority, you would not be shooting juvenile animals, which many, many, many do.
Yeah. Very interesting.
I don't care if you do, but just don't use that argument because it's complete crap.
Yeah. Yep. I agree there for sure. It's I don't know. I think I said this on the podcast with Jeff. I may not have. I think we need I think we need an any buck season like we have. But I personally don't think it should run for 31 days. No,
not at all.
But I also
like they just switched a bunch of the moose over to in like region 6, where it's like you have a 10-day or whatever the hell it is, any bull season, and not during the rut or pre-rut, because they're obviously stupider and easier to kill during that time. Like have September 10th to 20th, any buck for mule deer, and the rest of the year draw or 4-point or whatever you want to go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a big fan of the draw route. It'd be cool. And then maybe leave
like how many guys do you know that wait till October to go out? Half a dozen guys go make a big camp and just slaughter spikes and 2-points, right?
Got my deer.
Yeah, complain they're not seeing more on the landscape. Complain they're not getting a chance at a 4-point. Like,
yeah. But I mean, at the same time, that is also the barrier to entry for a lot of folks, right? A lot of people don't have the ability to go backpack for 7 days, like you and I want to go kill a deer, right?
I guess that's kind of my stance with the Haida Gwaii thing. Like, new people have that ability without sacrificing all species going down that hole, right? Like, you want a new hunter, a guaranteed hunt? Take a gun pretty much anywhere in BC for a black bear.
Yeah.
Go to Haida Gwaii, do those sure thing trips. Like, not every species needs to be a sure thing. Bring your first time hunter to.
Here, you get a kick out of this. Okay. So every year I try to take on one dude that's either on his very first year of hunting or he's just kind of been spinning his wheels for a few years. Right.
Yeah.
And I never throw an underhand pitch. Like, I'm never like, okay, this is where you'll kill your deer.
Yeah.
Because frankly, that's also hard to do too, right? In BC, where you're like, go here in the middle of October, there'll be 17 other dudes and you might see a 2-point. It'll be great. But what I always set them up for is I always find an area that is going to be accessible to them quickly.
Yeah. And
just send them in there to learn an area. You know, like go in there in September a couple times, go in there in October a few times, go in there in November a handful of times. If there's a December season, go in December a few times. Yeah. And by the end of your season, you'll have an idea of what those animals are doing. And like, instead of an underhand pitch, like here's your deer for guys that really want to become hunters. It's just so important to learn animal behavior. And that's sort of the route I take when I try to get guys going, right? Because now that guy can take that information where he hopefully killed his first deer from having somebody to bounce, the data off of, and now he can take that and apply it to other areas. Like, oh, this looks like bedding. This looks like feeding. This looks like,
you know how to hunt.
yeah, exactly. Right. It's not just, you cruise in your pickup and shoot the first deer you see, because I mean, quite frankly, I think that's how that's how I killed my first deer. I killed my first deer on a fire road. Right.
Yeah.
And I just don't
it's
think
hunting, but it's not hunting, right? Like,
yeah. And
all down. You are hunting to kill it, but
and
like you're not patterning or learning anything about it, like you said, or trying to catch it between water and bedding and feeding, and like, there's nothing wrong with either, but it's definitely a great skill to learn. Like, good on you for teaching it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and like
the hunters that have been hunting 50 years can't even do that.
Right. And that's just it. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing the ladder that we just mentioned, like maybe shooting a deer from a truck or whatever.
I've got a pile of shit, like bears and whatever, go for a spring drive. Like, there's nothing wrong with it.
Absolutely. But like for me and for the guys that I try to help, like, it's good to develop those tools, and then the barrier to entry will be higher. Like, hopefully in a year or two, that guy will be able to hold out for a more mature animal if he wants, right?
Yeah, if he wants, entirely. You nailed it.
And I just think, like, the reason I mention it is talking about the barrier to entry, right? Like, the barrier to entry to shoot a 4-point on a fire road in BC out of a truck is like slim to none.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like you need to have somebody helping you out and helping you be able to read the landscape before you can do it. And that's why I think a lot of guys, this is where I'm going with it. Okay. And that's why I think a lot of guys don't do it, because they don't take the time to develop the skill. Right. Yeah,
very much so.
I don't know. That's going to be unpopular opinion of the day, I think, because it'll
totally
offend some people, unfortunately. But
yeah, even the amount of guys, like, if you want to talk about not knowing how to truly hunt, like the amount of guys I've encountered over the years that shoot at something, if it doesn't drop on its, like, where it's standing, they don't even follow it up. It's just there's a lot of dudes like that out there. It's sad. Like, a year hasn't passed where I haven't seen that. It's like bang, bang, bang. It's like glass for a second, drive away. But like, that's part of the hunting skills that just a lot of guys don't know. Like, do guys know how to track, like, when the blood trail goes dry, following the footprints, or like the displaced leaves or sticks or whatever?
Yeah.
Pick up the blood again. Like, those, I guess, basic fundamental hunting skills are not, I guess, commonplace with everybody. And yeah, a lot of guys forget that.
That's a tough one, man. Like hearing it or seeing it. I mean, man, like in 20, I talk about it all the time on here because it was a really, I don't want to say transformative, but it was a really, it kind of informed my feelings and stuff quite a bit. Yeah. In 2019, I shot a elk at 19 yards that I had worked for a good month to get in on. And, I never recovered that elk. Actually, strangely enough, my buddy killed that elk this year.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which is a great end to the story. And we found out what happened too, which is cool. But with that situation, man, like I worked for a month to get a chance at that big mature bull elk that was super elusive and was great at not getting shot by me. And I got that chance. I shot him and I never found him. And I bet you the rest of that elk season looking for him.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Like I hit him flush at 19 yards, like right where he should have died. Mm-hmm. And we knew it connected. And so basically what happened is the bullet didn't make it through the hide, the first shot. And then the second shot was high and back. Cause like there was almost no need for a second shot, how it went down. And I stood up and he had buried his antlers in the ground and he was on the way back up. And I was like, oh, I'm going to pump him again and hit him. The second shot hit him high and kind of like the hump area, right? And zipped right through. Yeah. But yeah, the bullet that was on the vitals didn't make it to the vitals. It just blew up on the hide. So
yeah,
too fast.
But anyways,
No, it was it was a poor bullet choice on my part. It was Hornady SST.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I have switched to a little bit more durable round for hunting elk. When I don't know, I learned how to hunt elk with a bow, so all of my elk opportunity is usually sub 60, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, I guess what I was gonna say is I spent a whole season looking for that elk, and like it really changed my kind of opinion on how you should handle it when you shoot an animal, right? If you know, unless you know like what happened, it's like kind of that sort of ends the hunt for me.
Yeah, entirely.
You know, so
like if you can call it as like for sure a clear miss, yeah, keep hunting. But if you hit something, fold your tag is kind of my standpoint. Yeah,
me too. That's where I'm at now.
Especially after an animal that bad that I will potentially kill too. Like,
yeah, I think like any mortal hit, I think you should be full cutting your tag personally. But anyway, well, that was a quick hour and 15. I think it always goes fast, especially now that I know where to where the rabbit hole. Yeah, I know where to take the conversation with you, and I don't have to ask what body you're running.
Yeah. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no worries, man. I always appreciate having you on, and I look forward to seeing your Instagram stories and your posts and hearing about your adventures going forward.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, dude. Where can folks find you?
Instagram. It's probably the only one I use regularly.
Yeah.
Just at my name, Nick Trehearne.
Perfect.
And I assume it'll be spelt out in the title. So
yes, I'll save you that. I'll try to get it correct. Have an excellent rest of your season, Nick, man. I appreciate you coming on this morning.
Can't wait to see what you do.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave us a review. If you want to support the podcast, please check out the gear on our website at wildernesslocals.net.